Hey, legal rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Nicole Bradick, Global Head of Innovation at Factor, whose journey from trial lawyer to legal tech entrepreneur proves that authentic leadership and thoughtful design can transform the legal industry. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm really thrilled today to have Nicole Bradick on. Nicole is quite a legend. She is an ABA, Women in Legal Tech, Fast Case 50, ABA Legal Rebel. She is also the global head of innovation now at Factor, previously CEO and founder of Theory and Principle, which is a design and development agency. And she's worked on so many projects, I can't list them all. We're going to talk about some of them. Nicole, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
I'm Nicole. I'm so used to saying that I'm the CEO of Theory and Principle. It's very weird to say that I'm anything other than that. I just sold my company like 3 weeks ago to Factor, and I'm excited to tell you guys about that. We work at the intersection of design and technology across the legal industry. So we're pretty unique in that we get to work on projects with the largest law firms in the world, the best legal aid organizations in the world, the biggest legal tech companies in the world, and now with our work with Factor, law departments as well across the globe. So our work really canvases the industry, and we're focused on creating digital products and with a really strong focus on UX UI, and how do we build products that are going to be very usable and easy to adopt, especially in a new era of AI where the technology is really great. Thinking about sort of how do we evolve the experience to match the technology.
Well, there's a lot to work on, and we're going to have decades to work on it. You know, just for the audience, like I've known Nicole for years. I'm just really thrilled to get to talk with you one-on-one today, learn a little bit more about what you've been up to since the last time we saw each other, and learn more about Factor and all that good stuff. But I do, as I do with all of my guests, want to go back to the origin story, the beginning. And in prepping to interview you, like I looked at, your education, and by the way, summa cum laude, pretty awesome, like very impressive at Maine Law. So one of the things that caught my attention is that you opened up shop in Portland, Maine, not Oregon. And at first, like hadn't, I wasn't familiar with Portland, Maine, but when I saw the pictures that you were posting to Instagram about your office, and it looked like it was actually on the dock or like near the port or something. Can you share a little bit about that office situation?
Sure. And I can tell you that I hadn't heard of Portland, Maine before I moved to Portland, Maine. I grew up in the DC area, and I would have thought like polar bears walked around in the streets here. But it's really a lovely place. Our offices are right downtown in Portland. We're on a wharf, so it's a very commercial fishing vibe. So we get a lot of like weird fish stuff that happens. So the fishermen come up and the lobstermen come in and out, and we get to see all kinds of weird fish stuff all day. We have a neighborhood seal. His name is Sealy Boy. He comes to visit us all the time. So it's a really, really beautiful place to work. And yeah, our headquarters are here, but we have team members that are remote throughout the country as well. But yeah, we've been able to build a fantastic team from this tiny little city and work on some massive projects around the world from this tiny little city. It's been pretty neat.
It's actually one thing I've really admired about you, Nicole, is that you have such a way of bringing people together, and in such a natural way. And I think I even saw a picture of the seal on Instagram.
Sealy Boy. Yeah, he's our bud.
As I do with all of our guests, I'd like to take you back to the beginning, the origin story. And so you mentioned that you grew up in DC. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. DC area, Northern Virginia. Yep.
Okay. What was it like growing up there? What kind of neighborhood was it? Was it in the city? Well, it wasn't in the city. It was more of, outside, more of a bedroom type community, and like what was that community like? What,
Yeah.
activities were you involved with, and what were your parents like?
Well, we're getting all the way down.
Yeah.
Okay. I should be on like a therapist chair here. Yeah, I grew up with in a very my mother was a Lebanese immigrant. My father, it was Croatian Italian. And so I grew up in a very multicultural household, mostly surrounded by a Lebanese community, very Lebanese community. The area we lived in was very international. We lived in an area where like the next town over was where like all of the senators lived and all of the like Justice Scalia lived. And so a lot of like really impressive people in the general like universe that we lived around. So like my I did like a moot court type thing in high school. We got to go to the Supreme Court and we met with the justices and we went and saw the basketball court. And so pretty unique situation growing up there. We moved to that area. I was in New York for a little bit growing up, and then we moved to that area for the school system. I have an older brother who has a cognitive disability, and actually that was sort of what pushed me into the law because we were struggling a bit with the schools there, and so we ended up getting an attorney who ADA was like just recently enacted, and we were able to get him placed at the lab school in Washington, which is this like bonkers amazing school for people with like exactly his sort of combination of needs, and it completely changed the course of his life. Like they had him on track to be like living in assisted living, where like working at McDonald's, and he's had a job at the federal government for like 20 plus years. He lives on his own. He owns a condo, like completely independent. So that is sort of like the inspiration I had to even go to law school was that experience. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She never graduated from high school. That's kind of was the MO back in the village. But she's a very loving mom. And my dad was we called him an international arms dealer. He's like an ex-Navy guy who then went to work as a contractor.
Yeah, let's dip into that a little bit more. Like, what's going on there? To the extent you could talk about it.
No, I actually like. So he had various like roles off and on with different manufacturers of like military weaponry that he would go and like try to sell to foreign governments. So like literally an international arms dealer.
And quite
cool.
entrepreneurial, I would think.
Yeah. And I spent much of my childhood, like summers in this tiny village in Lebanon. So that was a big part of my childhood.
Okay, so growing up in a neighborhood where you had a lot of different early early exposures to law, to moot court, to going to the Supreme Court, sounds like some early entrepreneurial influences from your father, and the Lebanese community through your mother sounds like it was a very strong, tight-knit group.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, I would say the things that sort of most influenced my career path. The thing you should also know, by the way, is that my father is the king of small claims court. If you sell firewood in the greater Northern Virginia area, you better watch out, because chances are my father has taken you to small claims court or will be in the near future because you have shorted him a cord of wood. He feels very strongly about what a cord of wood is and whether or not he has received an actual cord of wood, and he will take anyone to small claims court at the drop of a hat. So he also inspired my legal career very much due to his aggressive small claims court activity.
I'm a little curious about that. When was the first? How old were you when the first case came up?
I don't remember, but I do remember like going with him. And I think his first like 3 to 4 small claims actions were probably against like mechanics. Like any small business that could be harassed by my father probably was at some point. So taking action, using the legal system to its highest use. my father. Um,
Yeah, but those kinds of examples are important that, you know, not all of us assume that you could actually get results or that you could actually, have some influence in getting results through the legal system. Like, I think a lot of us would assume that you can't and just blow it off.
but all of us have a lot of time on our hands and are unreasonable people.
Well,
So that there's that too.
yeah. Well, okay, still like thinking about growing up in that environment, like was there did you have any like influential like uncles or cousins or just friends of the family that also like maybe you got that you thought of going to law school about, or that you got like you got a poli-sci degree from Virginia Tech first, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, I would imagine it's kind of in the air with growing up around DC, but was there a particular like influence in taking that on?
It's a really good question because it's something I actually like to talk about. And no, there wasn't. So one of the features of growing up in like a more immigrant community is that you tend to have people who are here for one of two reasons, or who are able to come here for one of two reasons. One is they have some connection, so they have they get married or something like that. So a lot of the people I knew were stay at home. A lot of the women I knew, particularly, were stay at home wives, minimally educated but lovely, lovely people. But they were stay at home wives without a career, or they were here because they were absolute geniuses. They were here on some like major fellowship because they were the top expert in something, or did something phenomenal where they were. So they were able to get some kind of fellowship to come here. So the universe of people I knew growing up were either like not really working or like the best at whatever they did, and like absolute geniuses. So in my mind, truly, I thought lawyers were geniuses. And I thought in order to be a lawyer, you really had to be a genius. I didn't have exposure really to lawyers. I didn't know any lawyers. We didn't know any lawyers. I knew we had a family member who had a kid who went to law school, but that kid was like truly a genius. So I had like very little understanding of what it took to be a lawyer. And like looking back on it now, like, yeah, a lot of geniuses in law school. But it was really like that's it. And what ended up happening is after law school, I got a job at the Attorney General's office in Boston, answering the complaint line at the Civil Rights Division, which like I got stories to tell from that. But that is where I saw like normal women working as lawyers, super normal women. And only then, only till I saw it with my own eyes and like met these women and they were real and just normal people that can go and have a coffee with, did I realize like, oh, like, I can actually do that. Like it's actually something that's attainable for me. And I would not have gone to law school if I never saw those women doing that. And like at that time I was debating between like law school and like fashion design school, and fashion design school felt a lot more attainable than a career in law, which is like also now looking back insane because that's a much harder path than a career as a lawyer. But yeah, it's I really just I had never seen average normal people doing average normal legal work.
You know, that point that you bring up is so important that it seems I think it seems to some people like, well, it shouldn't really matter. Like you see like examples of leadership and we all can relate to that or gain something from that. But there is something to be said about communities that reflect us and to see them um, succeeding or just doing the thing. And that in itself is so compelling because we literally can see ourselves, doing that same thing and opening the door for us too.
I think we can get lost in a lot of like bullshitty things when we talk about like representation and the importance of representation, and people can roll their eyes a lot. But I'm like actual like physical, tangible proof that like I had to see it. Like I had no belief that this was a thing I could do. There was TV that showed like Ally McBeal, right?
Right.
She's this like tiny, tiny genius. Like I knew people who were geniuses who did it. Like I read like John Grisham novels. Like I didn't know real life lawyers. I didn't know them that were female. Like I had to see it. So now I am 100% a believer that you have to see yourself. You have to see somebody who looks like yourself in that role in order to believe that it's possible. Or you have to be, a guy who just thinks everything's possible, which is like just not how a lot of women particularly are built. And it just is, right? And not all men are built that way either, right? Like I don't mean to say that, but it's a more common male trait to just feel optimistic that you can do things. And women tend to self-doubt until they can actually like tangibly feel that this is something they can do, which is also something I've tried to do as like an entrepreneur, which is like, it's interesting the way like we fetishize entrepreneurs and the way we talk about people who own companies. Like we used founder instead of like, I own a business. I own a business. Like I don't founder. Like why do we have to make it fancy? I own a company. I own a small business. Why is that a startup? It's a small business. Like why do we have to make everything sound so fancy? And then we talk about like the owner of this business. When it's a female, we always attach something to it, like, oh, you're such a badass entrepreneur. Like you're boss lady. Like we make it sound like you need to be something really like special in order to do this. And we don't attach anything like that to guys. Like, oh yeah, he's a founder, he's whatever. We talk about it like that. When we talk about a woman, we're like, oh, she's an incredible badass entrepreneur. Like I don't know, we do this. I don't know why, and I think we're trying to be supportive. But I think in trying to be supportive, we're like creating this vision of like a superhuman woman, and that's the only person who can do this. But like I am like absolutely the most average person that can exist. And like I just sold my company for a lot of money. And like the message I try to get out all the time is like, if I can do it, like literally anyone can do this. I am terrible at math. I've never written a line of code. I went to state schools. I had no connections with anyone when I started. I didn't know a single person. I don't know rich people. Like I like had nothing. I had $500. Like I just had an interest, and I like people. I can understand people, and everybody's got like a couple things that they're good at, or a couple things that like make them. And that's the thing I tell my team all the time. Every time I do something stupid or badly, I'm like, guys, there are some things I'm good at. And it's just some. There's just some. So like the rest of the stuff, you just gotta deal with the fact that I'm not good at it. And I think that the more we can get that message out, the more women will realize, oh yeah, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can start a company, and maybe I don't have to think about it as, oh, I got to start a company. I got to go raise funds. And oh, that's such a big barrier because it's so hard for women to raise money, and everything feels so hard and big. And like, that's the other thing, is that people always ask me about like, oh my God, you're so brave. You're so brave. That we use the word brave a lot. I took no risks. I've now run 3 companies, and I took no risks. When I started my first company, I had a newborn baby and a toddler. I couldn't take risks, and we had no nest egg. I had nothing to fall back on. So I started my first company while I was still a lawyer, didn't leave it until I had enough money that I could, sold my first company into my second company, and then sold my interest back to my second company to start my third company. Like I took no risks. There were no risks at any part of any of this. Everything was a safe bet. Everything was a sure bet, like you would do if you were applying for another job, right? Every time you take a new job, you're taking a risk, but not really. It's safe bets. You're taking safe bets each time. So you don't have to be like this risk-taking, badass, super, you could just be a normal freaking person and build a company and sell it for lots of money. That's my speech.
Well, I think it's a great speech and a great lesson for a lot of people to learn. And by the way, when we spoke off camera before we came on, I hope it's okay for me to give people the hint that, to expect down the road, you might be writing about this, and they could probably get some great wisdom and pointers from you.
Yes, I just decided yesterday I'm gonna write a book that's called like I'm Super Average, the Nicole Bradick story. So
Well, I don't think, I mean, it's hard to think of you as average, Nicole, seriously. But, I get where you're coming from, that you don't have to, be a superhero to, to open a business. In fact, there's, as you said, there's millions and millions of small businesses across the United States making tons of money. In fact, it's the backbone of our economy. And, you know, I don't know that we have millions and millions and millions of superheroes, great people, great hardworking people, and there's a need, there's a need in the market and they satisfy that need. So no, I think it's
I think the other thing is that like I think media perpetuates it, and I think we all like we give a lot of we spend a lot of time rewarding raises, like fundraising, and we spend a lot of time, which rightly so, we spend a lot of time celebrating like the big exits. But like if you sell a company, let's say you sell a company for like 1 million, 2 million, $3 million, and you started it with like $500. That's huge. But we've been like in this weird microcosm of the universe, we've been trained to think like, oh, that's like not a good exit. Like a sub $10 million exit, we're like, oh, that's cute. That's insane. That's life-changing money for anyone. It should be. Like, that's bonkers. Unless you come from a ton of money, that's not going to be life-changing. But like, you turn $500 into like $5 million. Like, that's crazy. Like, we should be celebrating those instead of being like, instead of having those like whisper conversations, like, yeah, I heard she sold it for, $6 million. Like, what? What's wrong with you guys?
well, absolutely, especially in light of the fact that our little, sub niche here of legal tech 10 years ago, wouldn't draw that kind of interest at all. It's just more recently that there has been this interest from private, equity and money coming into it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, what I'm doing is pretty much part and parcel of that, just bootstrap, profitable, running a business here. Hey.
Great. It's great.
Yeah.
And you've also like you've been nimble enough to like completely evolve your business as technology's evolved, as like the market's evolved, like, and you haven't needed capital to do it because you've been nimble enough to do it. And it's amazing. It's great.
Well, I would like to get into a little bit, in a little more detail about like the first business, like you said, it wasn't a risk, that it was a safe bet, but any business really, when you start it, there's unknowns, there's risk, there's uncertainty. And, I know that, after law school, you worked at a firm, then then you transitioned out of that to things that were more alternative legal jobs. But if we do like kind of jump ahead to the first business, if you could tell us like what went into the decision that you made and like why you thought
Yeah.
it was a good bet and why you thought it was a safe bet.
Sure. Yeah. So I had been practicing as a trial lawyer. And there's a lot I really liked about that job. But the sort of adversarial nature was really grinding, right? And I was in a type of practice where like I constantly had the same adversaries, and it just got to feel like it was really wearing me out, it was draining me. And so I started thinking like, okay, what else can I do with this law degree? And I live in a small market, and we had little kids at the time, and so we didn't want to move. And so I started looking around and doing like informational interviews. I don't know if those are still a thing, if people still do that. Because you couldn't get remote jobs then. And I was really just a victim of constraints. Like there was nothing interesting in this market to do with the JD. Like if I lived in New York, maybe I never would have started a business because maybe I would have found something that was actually interesting to do with my JD at the time. But here it was like I could work for another firm, or maybe I would have gotten like one of the like 5 in-house jobs, or like there was like very little I could do with the JD that wasn't practicing law at a private firm. So I started sort of thinking about what what to do. And this, I had this idea for this just based on like my observations of what was happening in the market and what was happening with friends of mine, to have a company that sort of brings, mostly at the time, women who had dropped out of practice because they didn't find it compatible with raising kids, but these are like super accomplished women, and matching them up with law firms who needed people like to do substantive legal work on like a just-in-time basis, right? Not rocket science, but nobody was really.
That was custom counsel, right?
Yeah. So I just decided to start it while I was practicing law because I was like, oh, let's give it a shot. We'll see what happens. I didn't actually know that I was entrepreneurial at the time. Like I didn't know that this was like a thing for me. I just knew I had to do something different than what I was doing and I didn't have other options. But like the second I started running that business, I was like, oh, like I kind of instinctively knew what to do or like what had to happen and like how I had to like get customers. And I had this like instinct about it all. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm supposed to be running a company. And then that company did pretty well pretty quickly, in part because like the state of innovation in legal was so sad at the time that all of a sudden like my name was like bright lights everywhere, like Nicole Bradick starts this super innovative company. It's like it was a staffing agency. So we did very well. Not very well. We did fine, enough to sustain life for my children. So then I was able to leave the practice of law because that company was doing well. It was a bit difficult. There was a time when I was part-time with 2 babies at home and running that company, and that was a bit of a tricky time. But it worked out.
Yeah, that's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, but I also believe that like when you have right after you have babies, your brain does some super magical things where you're able to do things that normal people aren't. Because I couldn't do that now. There's no way I could do that now.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. I guess it is. Works that way for the brain too.
Yeah.
So after that, it was purely legal, right? That you.
Yeah. So they were doing some like innovation consulting more on the small firm side. And that's where I started doing product work because we were doing some innovation consulting. We sort of stumbled into the first ever product that we did and it went extremely well. And I was like, oh, this is what I like, because I've always been really interested in design and I love the law, and it really sort of combined those two things for me. That after we did the first project, I was like, okay, I just want to do this. And then the phone kept ringing and then it kept ringing and then it kept ringing and we just kept working on these projects. And then I was like, this is all I want to do. So then that's what led to Theory and Principle.
And Theory and Principle was what, 7 years ago, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, in talking to you a little bit about the growing up and where, the early influences, you talked about potentially going into fashion design as opposed to going to law school.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to me of like just a frame of mind of embracing like curiosity, creativity, and like the aesthetic of things. And the aesthetic of things doesn't have to be literal. Like some, people might interpret that as like, okay, well, like the design and art and all that, which it does imply. But at the same time, it's like I said, a frame of mind. And it sounds like one that you acted on in Theory and Principle, that it's a way of like thinking through how you would do things in a way that kind of favors elegance, that favors beauty, and all of those things are important in a product. If you could speak to that a little bit, and what values and mission you were bringing to Theory and Principle that you wanted to do.
I think at the time we started the company, and by we I mean I had a couple guys who were working with me prior who joined pretty shortly after. UX was clear to me that it was of critical import and that it could solve, like design itself could solve a lot of like the low-hanging fruit problems. And the industry like wasn't really on board yet. There were like tiny like glimmers that the industry was going to be on board. And like what I mean is the tech could do lots of things, but the tech for me never really mattered. It's like we could solve a lot of problems just by like thinking through like the common human experience that happens around the problem. and designing exactly for that. Um, and then there is an aspect of like aesthetic beauty, right? Like I'm really drawn to beautiful man-made things. Like I'm happiest in like Paris as opposed to like in nature. Like I also am happy in nature and seeing like natural beauty, but you go to some place like Paris and it's flooded with man-made beauty. And I think we are able to create these universes for ourselves that really feel good. And I think that's what we can do in the digital space. And I'm not saying every product we've ever built makes you feel good, but I'm saying we can make something that is otherwise like not an enjoyable experience or not something you want to ever really do. And you can make it okay. You can make it fine. You can make it sometimes fun. You can make it pleasant. You can make it serious. You can make it interesting. You can make it however you want, like however we want to make it feel. We can make it feel some way. And that's a really cool power to have. And so I think, both with user experience design, but then also with user interface design, like the ability to like create a look and feel through imagery, through font, through color. You can really like create an actual experience that somebody has as they're experiencing the law in a way that they could never have experienced the law 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And you can completely transform even like the tiniest little interaction with the law or the big interactions with the law.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that, formerly and probably still with a lot of law firm websites and some applications that are out there, it's kind of like a 1980s beige office experience. And and you're right, like their feeling is really important, especially to ordinary people that these tools are intended to serve. Feelings are really important, and feeling accessible, feeling intuitive, feeling easy to use, and just sometimes it just looking like the place where you want to be. That is definitely one thing that I've noticed about the products that you put out, is that I could see literally when I look at them that there's an attention to detail and polish that goes into them where it feels like the difference between an Apple product and a PC. You know, there's that.
Very kind of you to say.
Yeah, well, it's well deserved because your products reflect that. So I'm interested, we can, I guess, move over to Factor to see how you're bringing that to them. And like, I'm not going to ask you numbers or anything, but like, but like your charge is global head of innovation for Factor. So what does that mean, and what do they do, and how do you see the next few years of your vision working there?
Yeah. So Factor was a kind of like perfect timing, perfect place kind of situation where we had been working on a lot of like UX problems around AI. There's a lot of interesting ways in which like the practice of design has evolved just over the last 18 months, 2 years. And it like continues to evolve. It's like rapidly evolving around how we design AI solutions. So it's a really interesting time on the design side. We've been able to be responsive to because we get a lot of client requests. We're working on a lot of client AI projects, both on like the vendor sides, legal tech companies who are building AI solutions, and law firm side. And we've done a couple of legal aid projects where we've done like the dev work too. But a lot of times the vendors and the law firms have like AI devs. So we're really doing design and front end, right? We're supporting that. So as a result, like we've really been able to hone in and really create some theories that constantly evolve around designing of those solutions. But what we haven't been able to do is dive in as deeply as we really, really need to as sort of technical leaders in the industry into sort of what AI can do for our products. Again, we were a small business. We didn't have any investment capital. I didn't want to take any capital. So we really didn't have like a good R&D function, which in this moment, like I felt like we really needed. Factor was the opposite. Factor has a huge R&D function, brilliant R&D team who've been like, they had people who just spend their time researching and developing POCs and playing and practicing and trying and experimenting and testing, and but they didn't have a product team, somebody who can actually turn these things into, I mean, and their team's done like a great job putting like UI skins on things and being able to test that way, but they didn't have a team that can really think about the UX. They just didn't have capacity, right? Because they've been doing the other stuff that we couldn't do. So so it's kind of like a beautiful marriage where we now get to leverage all of their R&D work. They get to leverage our product expertise. We get to keep doing the sort of work we've been doing, which is like serving clients across the industry. So we're not changing our MO. We're not changing what we do. But then we also get to work on internal projects for Factor, which is really satisfying for us on like as like product people, right? Like, so it's doing like agency style work is really fun because you get to work on a variety of things. Like we'll constantly have like new and interesting things happening and going on, but it has a lifespan. And at some point you turn it over to the clients, or the budget runs out or whatever. And you can't keep iterating indefinitely, typically with clients in agency style. So it's, from like a product perspective, it's really exciting for us to be able to like have something that we can keep testing and iterating and really improving over time. So Factor was the spinoff of Axiom, and they really focus on sort of solving the really complex high volume contract problems that corporates have, which is like perfectly lends itself to AI support, right? They have like 400, 500 attorneys who work with some of the largest corporations around the world, doing sort of high volume contract support. And even like from like, you know, some of the more like standardized work up to like relatively high level contract support. So they've been building these like accelerators, what they're calling accelerators internally, that aren't client facing. They're for their attorneys to use to speed up their work, to make a better work product, faster work product for their clients. And they've built really, really impressive things. So we're going to be continuing to work to improve those so that we can improve the output of the attorneys who are working for their clients. But then also thinking about how can we leverage these like various AI engines, this AI engine that they've built, and then build custom products around it for clients so that we can now accelerate building really, really slick custom products for clients who need things that are sort of in the space where we have these AI engines. So it creates a lot more opportunity for us, a lot more that we can offer to our clients, a lot more resources for us that we couldn't have as a small business, and that we just kind of felt like we needed right now, and in a moment where there's too much going on for like a small team to really be able to get our arms around.
Yeah, there's too much going on for any individual, and even a team, I would say. Like it seems like 5 or 6 things drop every single day.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
But
It's bonkers. And the nice thing too is like Factor has like a whole educational function too. Like they have a whole team that has like a learning function that like they go and do. They have something called like SenseMaker Academy. So we go and train law firms and corporate teams and whatever on AI. And so like we have a whole team whose job it is like keep up with everything so that they can then teach our clients and everything. So it's nice. It's like get this constant flow and like this constant funnel of information.
wow, that sounds like a really great world to live in, Nicole. Like that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, all of these different elements supporting each other, and it does sound like a perfect marriage in terms of, you know, you bringing something that they were lacking and they were lacking you, and your team. You know, one thing that this brings up, like you talking about like taking some of these accelerator engines and then making them client facing, like for me, like what it triggers in my mind is the idea that up until this point, really, a lot of the, you know, innovation in terms of AI has pretty much been building a faster horse, you know, and there really hasn't been much transformation, even though people talk about it. And it's partly because it's kind of difficult to see or predict what would be a practical implementation that actually would be transformative because we just don't know what it is yet. And there's, you know, there's hints of it. And like one of them is what you're talking about, where you take this kind of tool that's helping the lawyers, but making it external facing so that it could actually deepen that relationship with the client and make that relationship a little stickier so that they're going to likely stick with you because you're already providing them that kind of service. Is that part of the strategy there, or?
Again, like the UX of AI, like how, and I'm not talking in the technology sense, like the way that people experience AI in their work is going to be constantly evolving. Every 2 months, 3 months, we probably have to like reassess. But right now, like a busy lawyer sitting in a corporate legal department, they just want answers, right? They just want an answer. They want the output. They want to know like, what's our liability on this? Or here's 10 contracts. Can you pass them to me red line based on our playbook? If they could figure out and rely on an AI to do that, and they could do that easily, and it's seamless, great. But if they could also just ask a human who then uses the AI and then the human QCs it, like that's a nicer experience for the in-house lawyer at this moment. I think having that human in the loop right now, I think is mandatory for quality, right? We know that. Like we can't take a human out of the loop at any part in legal at this moment. But from a busy client perspective who's looking for output, and it's an output they can trust and rely on, I think it's really important that we think about like where in the process do we put the technology? Is it what the lawyer's communicating with immediately, or is it human to tech, or is it human to tech? Like there are stages where we really, there's like a continuum along this entire life cycle where we need to figure out where we put the humans versus where we put the machines. And I think we need to just get clever about it. And I think we need to think about it in terms of like, what do the humans actually want to be doing? And what do they need? And what do they need to trust that output and move on with their work?
Absolutely. Like that thought process that you just outlined is exactly what everyone should be doing. I'm heartened to hear that you're doing it because yeah, that's the new balance. The new way of working is what we're having to figure out right now. And yeah, with the continual changes that happen, it causes that whole picture to be reimagined. So like hopefully we'll get to a place where we could shake out how that's going to look soon.
And I think it will change also like based on familiarity. I think it will change based on comfort levels. It will also change in weird ways, right? Like I think as comfort levels with output rises, we're probably going to have to insert more friction, for example, because we don't want anybody sort of like auto pressing like yes, 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 and accepting, right? Because that is shirks their ethical obligations, right? Like if a system is like 98% correct and we're comfortable with that, and they just say yes, 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 is that enough? Maybe. But if it's not enough, do we have to insert some friction to make sure the lawyer is checking? So there are like also ways in which you wouldn't really think about rethinking the experience as people change in their experience with AI that are just going to be really fun and interesting, and they're evolving fast.
Yeah, we definitely have to think of a way to keep thoughtful humans like contributing to the process and not
Mm-hmm.
just us being like a monkey pressing the button.
Yeah,
And it would
definitely not there yet.
yeah, and it would still leave jobs for people too, which is a fantastic upside. So I noticed the Habibi portrait there, and it just made me remember that well, I think it was a couple of years ago now that you I think you put some t-shirts together, right? That said Habibi on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the loveliest thing. There was you might remember there was a big explosion in downtown Beirut that really like caused a lot of damage and a lot of harm. And so I did a fundraiser to raise money for the Lebanese Red Cross. So I made these Habibi shirts, and like the legal tech community came out in force. We raised so much money, and now like every time I go to like a legal tech conference or I'll randomly get on a call, somebody will be wearing the Habibi shirt, and I cannot tell you how much it warms my heart. Bob Ambrogi wears his Habibi shirt like every day. And he always is texting me. He's like, I met a new Lebanese person today because I was wearing my Habibi shirt. Like it's just honestly, it really is a very special community, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of it.
Well, I I really I really admired you doing that, and seeing so many people reach out. It's we're a small community too, and I think that we're pretty good at supporting each other. And I,
Absolutely.
I've loved seeing everything that you've been doing in your career, Nicole, and I'm so excited for you at Factor. It sounds like a wonderful place to work.
Thanks so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
So let me ask you a couple things in the time that we have left that I
Mm.
ask everyone. And one question is, because a lot of us are type A's, like we got a lot going on, and the question kind of implies that you have a way of balancing and juggling everything, and so you don't necessarily have to. But for the benefit of people that are watching and listening, do you have a couple pointers? Like how do you keep things balanced and up in the air?
I take a good amount of time off. I'm not shy about taking time off. I also I try not to schedule any calls unless like necessary after like 3 o'clock so that I have like working time or like time with my kids. I have teenagers. So the afternoon is usually the busy time to like drive them around. And that's really like, the only time I ever really talk to teenagers. I think you've got teenage daughters, or I think, and so you probably understand that like driving them around is really the only time you get to talk to them. And I try not to do any work in the evenings. The evenings are really like my time to just chill. I do a lot of sewing. I design and make clothes. So I try to get time with my hobbies on the weekends. And yeah, I'm not a great person to talk to though about like balance, because life is just a mishmash of all the things.
Well, that itself is, that's great wisdom to share, because it is the reality of it is that it is messy. There's a reason why there's that graphic of success, and it's not a straight line. It's like all this craziness headed towards the direction that you're hoping to go. So I think a lot of people, like you talked about, ordinary people can succeed, that they need to know that.
And
And
I just live my life. If I have like an appointment in the middle of the day, I just do it and don't think about it. And if I have a kid thing, I just do it. And I'm not like, oh shoot, I can't work during that time. Like I don't, no, it's like, that's the thing I need to be doing right now. Like I don't stress about that. I don't think many people do anymore. I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't really think twice about it. And my team knows that like, but it's interesting because actually like when I onboard new team members, I'll always like have a team member who like at the start will like message me and be like, "Hey, Nicole, just want to let you know I have to skip out for like a kid dentist appointment." I'd be like, "Why are you? Why are you telling me? Just go. Like, block it on your calendar so nobody schedules a call for you. But like, why are you even telling me that? Just go do your thing. Like, I don't care. No, you don't take PTO time to go take your like whatever. Like, this is life. Like, why would you?" So maybe there are places that where that's a thing. So I don't know. So that seems silly.
yeah, there still are a lot of regimented places, but I totally agree with you. Like if we're getting the work done and everyone's happy, that's a win.
Yeah.
Last question is, so at the end of the day, all this craziness, all the stuff to do, finding a way to thread the needle, what makes it satisfying for you? Like what makes all of this worthwhile?
Well, I mean, I having an exit is like a pretty good moment of reflection of work and what you're proud of. And I will say, like, the two things that stuck out most in my mind are I did do some like pretty good deprogramming of people who came to me from like more toxic work environments, where they were allowed to be like a lot more authentic and a lot more themselves. And I think if you let people be really truly authentic, they perform better and are much happier. And so I think I got to see a lot of people come through our doors and really sort of blossom and grow as humans, and just because they were allowed to be weird, or even if they're not weird, even if they're kind of like normal but quiet, they were allowed to be normal but quiet. And that's pretty rewarding. I don't think I ever was the best leader on the planet, but I think I at least made people feel like pretty comfortable and the ability to feel like really authentic. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm really freaking proud of the quality of the products we put out over the years. Like I look back at our portfolio and I feel really, really proud of what the work we've done. I think we have done the best work that has been put out in this industry. I feel not at all shy about saying that, because I think it's absolutely true. And it feels great to feel like we have this tiny team in this tiny city have pushed like a whole industry forward, because I really do feel that way. And that's pretty cool.
Well, it is pretty cool and an amazing accomplishment. And I just want to thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing some time with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. I think you're wonderful and you're a great member of this community. And I'm so glad we got the chance to chat.
Well, I appreciate that. And so for everyone watching, if they want to keep in touch with you, how best to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. I don't X anymore, really. So don't X me because I don't check it. And I have a new email address. I'm nicole.bradick@factor.law, the dots. But I'm always happy to connect.
And for all of you watching, thank you so much. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.